So what the Africa Climate Summit did was elevate Africa with one voice.
And really delved into the ways in which the African continent can contribute to global solutions.
So I do believe that these convenings are important. We have never ever as humanity faced such a massive crisis, but we also have an amazing opportunity to unite and solve it.
So the summit was to show some kind of cases of African in terms of opportunity that African countries can have in this context of climate change, and also to show some the action that some countries have also implemented.
The African Climate Summit was actually quite phenomenal. It was a moment where Africa came together, so we had the collaboration, to, with one voice, speak about what Africa is expecting the world to do. The one voice part is very, very important. Africa's superpower is her one voice. So what the Africa Climate Summit did was elevate Africa with one voice so that we can tell the world what it is we had. Now, the battle of Africa's agency starts with a narrative. It doesn't end with a narrative, but it starts with a narrative. And that was beautiful about the ACS. It created a narrative that in my professional lifetime I thought was wonderful. And I was like, finally. It wasn't Africa asking for need. It wasn't saying, oh, we need help with X, Y, Z. It was Africa in its fullness of its agency saying, listen, world, what you need is renewable energy. What you need is green minerals. What we need is investments. So now let's sit on the table. We'll bring our assets, you bring your assets, and together the whole world gets what it needs. That's what the Africa Climate Summit said. It was Africa moving in its power, saying, we have this. The world needs it. There's a phrase that says, Africa's solutions to African problems. I dislike the phrase strongly. African solutions for global problems. That's the game we're playing. Africa Climate Summit was that was the game we played. We said, all right, world, you're careening into 2%, 2 degrees. We have solutions. If you want to solve, let's deal. If you don't want to solve, if you're not serious about solving it, sure, we can all careen into 2 degrees and languish. Having that moment come to that, of Africa coming together and showcasing to the world that we have agency, we have things, and we have resources that you need, and you really need to participate, was, for an African, it was just a moment of pride. Now, it starts there, but it never ends there. So the next question is, until we can actualize what's in that declaration, piece by, we literally have to break it down and say, who is the one holding our governments to account? Okay, we said we're going to get renewable by this timing, 56 years, or get this much kilowatts of power generated through renewable energy. Who's tracking us to say, we haven't really started anything, or we have... That's the work that we all need to do together. We know how to get something going viral, memes. We need to infuse that humor and that ability to capture the attention of the regular African just trying to make a living, trying to get his or her kids to school, trying to have a few meals a day to eat, so that the so what matters to them. And the so what is, you're part of a bigger community. Look at what your government has done. They have pledged to do this. Your role can be either renewing, reusing, how we take care of our environment, the links between what you're seeing with the rains coming too much, the rain's not coming enough, your farm's not getting produced, the links with the conversation we just had, and what you can do about it, and how you can hold your government accountable to doing what they said they were going to do. Because if a tree falls in the forest and no one here heard it, it's not going to fall. Did it fall? I don't know. I didn't hear it. If they say all these beautiful things in Nairobi and no one holds them to account, did anything really happen? So that's how it links.
The Africa Climate Summit was a platform for African leaders to discuss climate change and climate action from an African perspective. Because often these conversations are not from the perspective of the continent. We wanted to showcase Africa's opportunities and solutions for global climate challenges. The summit was hosted by Kenya and really delved into the ways in which the African continent can contribute to global solutions. We know from research, the International Renewable Energy Agency says that Africa has the potential to generate up to 310 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030. But currently, we're only tapping into 2% of that potential. So the summit emphasized the need for investment and support to realize this potential.
So I think one of the strategic outcomes and wins was, for the first time in 28 years, most of the countries agreed to move away from fossil fuels. But I think the fact that it took us 28 years to get to this consensus highlights some of the points and the struggles that we have when we convene at an international level. But I think it is important. The fact there was some debate about moving away completely or phasing out. However, from an African perspective, especially a country like South Africa that relies so much on fossil fuels for power generation, it is important to understand that it's very difficult for us to just move completely away, and that a more just transition would be required. And I think that was really important, a takeaway from that. So I do believe that these convenings are important. We have never ever as humanity faced such a massive crisis, but we also have an amazing opportunity to unite and solve it. But I find very often that whilst these treaties and negotiations and all these convenings are really, really important for us to get to the solution, I think that we need to work better on creating more awareness on what some of these solutions are, and how and a narrative that is maybe a little bit more understanding for the masses, because it is something that's going to require us to unite and to do it together. So I definitely feel like there's been a transition within the energy space. You're seeing more and more shifts towards renewables, be it solar, be it wind farms. There's a lot of discussions about hydro energy and stuff like that. So it's definitely becoming more and more prevalent in the industry. We're seeing a lot more corporates releasing tenders for these kinds of projects, which tells me that there's action happening. However, I feel like it is very challenging for a country like South Africa, where where there's such a heavy reliance on fossil fuels, and also it's massive corporates that are benefiting from the current traditional way of energy. So there is a bit of a disconnect, and I feel like in order for us to get there, we do need to obviously have better discussions, more robust discussions. There seems to be a lot of recognition for the problem, but not necessarily sufficient action to back that problem. So it's definitely a space where we're having some kind of action towards renewables. There's definitely a lot of convenience, a lot of discussions as to how this would look and what would it translate. Like we've got communities which are heavily reliant on coal industries. We've got infrastructure that is designed for coal power plants, and there's now conversations about what would that look like to retrofit it, to re-engineer those plants to be more greener. So yes, there's definitely action happening, and I think it's important.
It was about the annual United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Conference that people call basically COP. That offer a strong framework for intergovernmental engagement and a consensus building on issues to help them to keep the progress in terms of international climate policy process. And then also a framework that remain in terms of limitation for the negotiation. So the conference therefore constraint in advancing innovative action and building partnership, especially with non-state actors to proactively address the climate emergency, and then also to help in addressing the climate justice as well. So there since has been a growing interest among the parties to bring the climate action beyond the traditional space, and then also to include complementary space and the stakeholders. So to help them to understand the issue of climate change and what it's required to gather ambition on the part of the non-state actor, and then also for it to be like a forum beyond the United Nations framework, a convention on climate change. They decided to bring it after the COP 2027, which happened in Egypt. And then it was His Excellency President Ruto who announced that Kenya will offer to host this African Climate Summit in 2023. So the summit was to show some kind of cases of African in terms of opportunity that African countries can have in this context of climate change, and also to show some the action that some countries have also implemented for them to be able to progress towards the climate action. And so this was the purpose of the climate summit. Thank you, Melanie.